and I'm really not that smart. Hi, I'm Tom. I post fiction or publish fiction under the name T.H. Willoughby, and usually about once a week I try to go over a bit of advice for writing or for the writing process, which has helped me in the last week, or which I've been thinking about in the last week. But usually I keep this more towards the getting writing done side of things and less towards the craft side of things. Mainly because craft is one of those things which I don't think I can yet speak to with any real measure of authority. I can say what it's like to be someone who is trying to become a professional writer. I can say what helps me or hinders me when I'm trying to hit my word count, and I can speak to some of the psychological things which may get in my way. But I'm not published yet. I haven't yet finished editing my first novel, and I haven't ever queried anything with agents or publishers. So there's a lot of the process which I don't know a whole lot about. There's a lot that I still have to learn. And while it's true that anyone in any part of their writing career still has a lot to learn, I definitely know that I've got more to learn than most. But one thing which does really help me is the Writing Excuses podcast. I actually spent years not listening to this, being aware of it and not listening to it. And the main reason for that is because I didn't know one... Oops. I just fell over then. I didn't know one crucial thing, which, had I even listened to a single episode, I would know, because it's right there in their intro haiku. It's only 15 minutes long, each episode. It's released once a week. I was thinking, oh, it's a podcast, it's probably going to be like an hour long. Nope, just 15 minutes. I can usually get through 3 or 4 of them just on my evening walk. And that's how I tend to do it. It's probably not the best way to do it. I do not go back and do the homework, which is bad because it means I'm not fully internalising what they say in each episode. But it does really help me. And sometimes I'll listen to a whole episode and I'll sort of keep those things in the back of my mind, and when I'm writing, maybe I'll think back to it and I'll know what to look out for, or I'll know a different way of doing something, and it's really good. And sometimes they'll make one offhanded comment which is just like one sentence, oh, by the way, blah blah blah. And this sentence will be something which they probably don't feel the need to expand on so much, because maybe they've done it in a previous episode, or they're planning it in a future episode, or it's just something which they have internalised to the extent where they don't realise quite how important it can be for someone who hasn't thought of it before. So sometimes they'll make this one comment and my brain will go, oh, that's a pretty big thing, and I can see how my book will be better now that I know it. And this isn't like making changes for the sake of change. These are generally some like pretty fundamental things which I've just not realised I've been noticing about other books that do it, if that makes sense. Things that, if a book does it well, then you'll never notice it. And if you've never read a book that does it poorly, then you'll never notice it. So sometimes one of those sentences will come along, and I often need to just like pause the podcast while I go off or mentally go off and digest it and work out how it affects my book and whether I need to make changes and things like that. And one of the things recently is something that Brandon Sanderson, one of the hosts of the podcast, says quite often, but it's about the 3 P's of writing: the promises you make to the reader, the progress you show of your characters moving through their arc, and the payoff at the end. And just recently, one of the times when he was talking about it, I think this is in one of his lectures instead of on the podcast, which is, if you want to see any of those, he's got them all up on his YouTube channel. You should be able to find it pretty easily, but I'll link it below. So yeah, he mentions this, he goes into a bit of detail, and for the first time I really start to think, okay, what promises am I making in my book? What progress am I showing? Well, this is one of the things I know that I need work on. I need to go and work on the character arc so that they're actually showing progress. And then I need to tie it all into payoff at the end, which I think is pretty much done. But the promises, I realised entirely without meaning to, I was making a promise at the beginning of the book that the main character, Yasmin, was trying to create a food source for a downtrodden majority called the Flotsam. And then I realised that I don't ever really tie that into the Flotsam. I show progress of how she's developing it and what roadblocks she comes to developing the technology itself, but I make the main interaction she has being hostility with the mega corporations. And I realised that in my mind she's always been at war, like fighting her own private war with mega corporations, and this is what's driving her. So my promise at the beginning of I'm doing this to feed the Flotsam is what she wants, but it's not what she needs. She thinks she's working towards that goal, but she's really working towards a completely different goal. And I need to telegraph that early on so that it's obvious to the reader that this is what's happening, even though she doesn't know it herself. And then they don't feel so put out when that's the main driving force in the books. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go back and add in a lot more interaction with the Flotsam throughout the book, because I realised I had no named Flotsam characters who want like power players within the Flotsam community. And so all of this came from like a 2-minute segment of the Writing Excuses podcast, and I think that's why it's really important that I'm listening to the podcast regularly and that I keep on listening to it. And I think if you're not listening to it, it might be worth giving a go and seeing whether you enjoy it. So yeah, that tied in a lot more to my own stuff than I intended it to, but yeah, good podcast, go listen. In terms of my own writing, I've had a fantastic week. I've managed to do the 5,000 words I wanted to do on theft of eminence. I have managed to do all of the action sequences and dialogue tags and little bits to break up the long dialogue blocks. And I'm now moving on to the next editing task, which will probably be everything I just talked about, which is going to be hopefully not too major because there should be places to hook in, but we will see when I begin tomorrow evening. That's about all I've got for you today. Whatever else you're doing, I hope you have a good one. Bye.